What is up, everyone? Welcome to another edition of Grinderslive here on RotoGrinders. We got some bases ball going on today, a full slate, a lot of fun things, and a guy that I think Cardi's going to disagree with. Also, Cardi has to pay off a bet. So it's a good day all around. It's a beautiful Wednesday. The sun is kind of shining. Maybe, I don't know. I haven't left my house, but that doesn't matter. Cardi, how you doing over there, my friend?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm going to get to take a shot in a few minutes, so that's pretty exciting. Definitely perked me up a little bit.
Yeah, well, I like winning bets. I like winning ridiculous bets, and I think I got another one on the plate today. It's going to be a doozy.
I'm excited to hear what it is because your stuff can be off the board sometimes, and you like to give real good odds on bets, so I'm pretty pumped.
And I win them at a surprising rate.
You have won them at a surprising rate this year.
Oh, well, we got a nice, 14-game slate? I mean, depending, we're going to go through FanDuel. We're going to go through Draftkings. They have different start times, I believe. I think the Red Sox and the Blue Jays game is on the FanDuel slate, and I believe the Orioles game is too. Is that correct?
I think so. I know FanDuel starts earlier. I think it's 6:30 start, so probably the Phillies Nats is not on, and the rest are, I think.
Yeah, so that means we got a big old slate today. Lots of stuff to talk about. I guess the easiest way to do this is just going to be go through the Red Sox and the Orioles game first. So just because that's the only one on FanDuel, we'll get that out of the way quickly in case you need to set in your FanDuel lineups a little bit earlier. So let's go ahead and get started on them. First off, bats from this game, like huge total in the Red Sox game. 11, we got Brewer going up against Merriweather. And, like, what bats do you like from this game? What bats does the bat like from this game?
I mean, it's hard not to like bats in this game. Like, Salem Field has been every bit the hitter's park that we kind of thought it was going to be. Like, the dimensions are just so hitter-friendly. It is played very hitter-friendly. And there's bad pitchers here, so, take your pick, really.
Yeah, what's your go-to bats in here? Bats on here. I mean, I know Vasquez is sitting there at 2.5K. Seems like it's a little bit too cheap. If you need a cheapie, Bradley is sitting there at 2.1K. Over on the other side, Shaw is sitting at 2.5K. There are a surprising amount of cheap bats. For cash, which guys are you what's in the bats optimal right now over on FanDuel?
So there's not a ton in the actual optimal from this game, but I really think you can think about any of these guys. Like the Jays I love, just as a team. Teoscar Hernandez is one of my favorite players. I think you can play pretty much anyone you want from here. I think more as GPP plays probably, but you can think about one-offs too.
All right, nice. Well, let's move on to the next game here. Pitchers, Richards, Woj. Like Richards has got a 3.66 run total against me. He's 5.6K. Like not projected to come in at a ton of ownership. Any interest in him at all?
Yeah, I think Richards is actually a pretty decent pitcher. I don't have a problem taking a shot on him in a GPP setting, and I like the Rays a lot as a stack in this game. Wojciechowski is bad. The Rays are really underpriced. I think that's probably the team I have the most interest in from this kind of like early set.
Yeah, and by the way, guys, just so you know, pay attention to crunch time. It'll be a real quick one there because Roth's going to have to go over weather in that Blue Jays game, and he currently has it at orange. So just keep that in mind. Have some pivots off of it if you need to, because it's only going to be about 20 minutes, 15 minutes when crunch time starts to when that game actually starts. But, but also, Richards, do you have a pitch count? What does the bat currently have him as a pitch count? I'm not playing over on FanDuel Day because of the show.
It hasn't projected. I think he's actually fairly stretched out. Let me see if I can pull it up. But I think he should be pretty much good to go.
I mean, at that price tag, I don't really care that much. I mean, the quality star is obviously something that we pay attention to over on FanDuel, and the win, so he has to go late enough into the game, but Baltimore's fairly free swinging, so I don't mind that at all. What about the bats over in this game? I got Meadows as one of my favorite bats. Choi and Yoshi are both fairly cheap on this slate. Renfroe, I know, is going up against a righty that can actually strike out a decent amount of guys. He's batting 7th, but he's still 2.8K. Like, what are your favorite bats from this game, and are you using any of the Baltimore ones?
Definitely more Rays than Baltimore. Meadows, I think, is the one that I like the most here. I think he's obviously the best hitter on the team. He's 3.6K, so very affordably priced. But I think just in general, the team is super underpriced. They project as like, I think the third or fourth highest point per dollar stack in the bat today. So, up and down the lineup, you're going to be able to find good guys and you're going to be able to plug them in as a stack.
Nice. Well, that's pretty much FanDuel, guys. Hope it helped out. Now let's move on to the fun games here. Let's start off with pitching. DeGrom, is he just a lock and load for you?
He is. There's no way not to play DeGrom today. Like he's the best pitcher in baseball. He's in the best pitcher's park in baseball. He's facing perhaps the worst offense in baseball. There's just no way to get off of Jacob DeGrom. He's expensive, but you eat the salary and you play him because I think this is probably the highest pitcher projection I've seen all year in the bat. He projects for 26.5 DraftKings points. I don't think we've had anyone else that high so far.
So you ready for a shot bet? I'm giving you really good odds on this one because you just keep losing over and over again.
Are you going to bet against Jacob DeGrom?
I'm not quite betting against Jacob DeGrom, but there is a pitcher in the 6K range who's going to outscore him.
I mean, all right. Who we got?
Kevin Gausman.
I had a feeling it would be Gausman.
Yeah, you know me far too well. You know how much I love Gausman. I've just been playing him a lot so far this season. He's been fantastic. Like, you look at his numbers compared to Kershaw's numbers this year, what's the difference between the two?
I haven't looked, but I'm guessing there's not a lot of difference between them.
Ground balls. That's the difference between the two players.
Okay.
That's pretty much it. Gausman has been absolutely fantastic since the beginning of last year. This year, he has been great. 4% walk rate, 31% K rate, 3.03 xFIP. Like, he's given up a decent WOBA and ISO to left-handed hitters, but that's like probably not going to continue. The splitters is out pitch. It's obviously a pitch that's good against both sides of the plate so far this year, but I think he's going to just mow down these Dodgers. Already played him once, put up 22 points, and he was limited to 80 pitches in that game there. It's 60 degrees in the ballpark. Yes, the wind's blowing out to left field, which is not a good thing considering, but I don't care. I love Gausman today. Please tell me why the bat doesn't have him ranked that highly.
Well, the bat doesn't have him ranked high in a raw sense because he's facing the Los Angeles Dodgers, and the Dodgers are a really good offense. But the bat does have him as a top 5 point per dollar option. Like I was going to mention him as a sneaky GPP play because I don't think people are going to play him against the Dodgers. I think he's going to come in really low owned, and there's plenty of value here at this price. And with his talent probably being better than most people assume it is.
Yeah, people just hate Gausman for some reason. I don't know why.
Someone in chat just called him Kevin Gas Can because he's a gas can, which he's not. I mean, he's a guy who has blow-up outings in the past and, for a couple of years was kind of mediocre, maybe for a year or two was bad. But, you look at the underlying numbers and he's not. He's an above-average pitcher.
Yeah, no, he's a well above average pitcher. Like, people don't seem to realize that once he added that splitter to his repertoire, he has been entirely night and day different. Like, we look at last season, beginning half of the season, he was not a great pitcher. He was sitting there at 4.61 xFIP, only a 22% K rate. And then second half of the season, 30% K rate, 3.18 xFIP. This is not a new thing. Like, he has not just gotten good magically this year. People look at the entire numbers for last year, which is not the smartest thing to do. Once he changes his pitch count, once he fixes his location, we have a long enough sample size, I feel like, to know that he's a guy that can actually locate his pitches, which he mostly only throws splitter, fastball, and a little bit of a slider. And they've been fantastic so far. So he's a guy that is a lot better than people realize. The pricing on him is just atrocious on the slate. I get he's playing the Dodgers, and I get the Giants ballpark has been a lot better for hitting so far this year, but 60 degrees at opening pitch tonight. It's going to get darker. It's going to get colder. It's not going to be great weather. Like, this is an absolute perfect spot here for Gausman outside of the matchup. And his price is so low, and he's only projected at 16% ownership right now. I love him. I think that he's going to crush tonight. I may end up just hating myself in about, six and a half hours, but I don't care. I'm going with it. Our shot bet is Gausman versus DeGrom.
Fine. I mean, I actually do like Gausman, though. I think he is a very good under-the-radar play tonight. I don't think he's better than Jacob deGrom.
I mean, if I was given even money, I would definitely not take deGrom. But it's literally, or I would definitely take deGrom. I'm not a crazy person. I know what I'm doing. I know that chances are I'm probably going to lose this bet, but just felt like giving you some decent odds here. The interesting thing is, like, he's the same price, or he's actually cheaper than Robbie Ray. Like, same implied total for Ray going up against the Rockies. Like,
Do you think people are going to play Ray? Is he going to be like a high-owned guy tonight, or are people just kind of like, he's been so bad I can't do it? Because the matchup is obviously pretty good. The price is really good. And the history for him is really good. So he's actually the guy that the bat projects as the top point per dollar guy on the slate. But he's been really bad this year, which is weird because, like, you look at what he's doing and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like, his velocity is up, his spin rate is up, he simplified his mechanics. I think a lot of it is bad matchups and variance, and I think regression is coming. But I mean, what's your take on Ray?
I mean, Ray, it's simple. He's getting wild. Like, he's got a 20% walk rate on the season. That's the reason why.
It's very high, but that has to come down. Like, pitchers don't do that sustainably.
They don't do that sustainably, but it doesn't just happen immediately. It's got to come down eventually. I'm not saying Ray's not a good play the rest of the season. I'm not saying Ray's not a good play tonight. It's just at his ownership, with Gausman being a perfect pivot or a near perfect pivot, Gausman is 100% the better play. I mean, you look at Ray, you look at the pitches he throws, and he's changed it up a little bit this season. We look at the whiff rate, and obviously his curveball is just through the roof. His slider is through the roof. Like, he has an out pitch versus lefties. He has an out pitch versus righties. But his location on those two pitches, where he relies on heavily, is not nearly as good as it has been. It could be simply like he's tipping pitches. Like, if he's tipping off-speed and non-off-speed pitches, righties know it's likely going to be a slider going up against him or a curveball, and they can just lay off of him because he's probably going to be out of the zone. So his walk rate is through the roof, both versus righties and lefties, more so versus righties, and it's because he's either tipping his off-speed pitches or he's just not able to locate it, and so he has to rely more on outs with his fastball, which doesn't generate a whole lot of swing and misses, only a 50% or whiff rate on the season. So if they know that's coming, he really can't do much about it. And so it's why his hard hit rate versus righties is 54% on the season. And it's why he's not getting ground balls. He's not getting, and he's getting a ton of walks, and his K rate isn't as high because he can't rely on those out pitches because he's just a little bit wild, probably because of the lack of spring training, probably for a few other things. But even in this matchup where they don't really walk a ton in this lineup going up against lefties, it really doesn't matter too much because he's just not going to be able to locate there's a chance he may not be able to locate his pitches. And at that ownership, it makes it the easiest choice in the world to go Gausman over Ray every single time.
Do we have projected ownership yet? I don't think I see
28%. 28% for Ray.
Oh, so he's projected as the third highest guy on the slate. Okay. So, yeah at that ownership, maybe not as much interest. But I don't know. Like, that seems high to me. I really think people are kind of seeing a lot of what you're seeing. They're just fed up with Ray. They see the high ERA. They see the peripherals are bad. I'd be surprised if he comes in that high. If I'm wrong, though, then, obviously at that ownership, not as strong of a play.
I mean, the thing that really can take away, obviously people are going to go Lamet. People are going to go the aces, like people are going to play DeGrom. A lot of ownership's going to go that way. People don't trust Gausman, so he's not going to be that heavily owned. I think it was, 4%, 5% last time he was out. So it's not really – and going up against the Dodgers, people are going to do the same exact thing and just not play him. I guess there's potential that people go on Hernandez, but he doesn't have the win equity that a lot of other guys do. Like, he's got a decent K or a very good K rate on the season, staying at 32%. He is the guy that I think people will go to if they don't go with Ray. Like, Hernandez, I think, was popping in the bat. I'm not sure. I can't remember.
I like him a little bit.
Yeah, so I think he's more of a guy that people are going to go with. It's essentially DeGrom or Gausman with an easier matchup just based on these year's numbers. But I don't know if those are fully the best numbers to go off with him. Gausman, we have a little bit longer of a track record. And Hernandez is giving up a 50% fly ball rate, 50% hard contact rate. I guess it's a good ballpark. I don't mind going with Hernandez. And if these ownerships do hold true, I will just full on fade Ray and I will go Hernandez and Gausman 100% of the time because I think Hernandez is probably close to the same as Gausman is today. But like we look at the other pitchers on this slate, and we got Lester, obviously not good. Fulmer going up against the Cubs, not touching him. Barrios, probably too expensive. People are going to go with Lamet. Clevenger, probably not going with him because of his struggles so far this year. Fires doesn't strike out guys. Hauser, Gray is a guy that's going to draw some ownership, and absolutely rightfully so. I know that you like the Brewers a lot more than most other people do, but I still think Gray's going to crush. Like people aren't going Hudson.
Yeah, I think Gray is actually like Lamet is going to be super chalk, and Gray is $200 more and projects exactly the same as Lamet. So I think, assuming this game plays, because there's talk of them boycotting this game and this game not even happening. But if this game plays, I think Sonny Gray is an awesome pivot off of Lamet. Lamet's an overrated pitcher. Like people love Lamet this year for some reason, and I guess it's because the strikeouts are high, the ERA is great. But you look at who he is as a pitcher, and he's going to regress. Like this is a guy who historically has had issues with control. His walk rate this year is the lowest it's ever been at any level of the majors or minors, and it's only been 6 games. Like that's not going to continue. He's an extreme fly ball guy who's not giving up home runs when historically he's given up home runs. Like that's going to happen. He's a good but not a great pitcher. And Sonny Gray is a great pitcher. Sonny Gray is like a top 10 pitcher in baseball. Yeah, Lamet has the better matchup against Seattle. And I do think the Brewers are underrated, but it's a park upgrade for Sonny Gray. He's got a pitcher's umpire, and he's got a much longer leash than Lamet. Lamet's baseline pitch count is like 87 pitches. Sonny Gray's is 103. So they're basically the same play today, and everyone's going to play Lamet. So if this game actually plays, Sonny Gray is the GPP guy to pivot onto, I think.
Honestly, I really like a Mariner stack. We'll go to that when we get to stacks.
I do too.
Huh?
I do too.
Oh, gosh, darn it. I don't like how much we're agreeing.
That being said, I do want to say Lamet is probably your cash guy on DraftKings. It's probably DeGrom and Lamet. I'm not saying don't play him. I'm not saying he's a bad play. I'm just saying, he's not the clear better play over a guy like Sonny Gray.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. Any other pitchers that we haven't talked about? I know that we kind of rushed through that and didn't really go over as many guys as probably should, like Clevenger. Any interest in him today?
Not really. I mean, I guess you can take a shot in a GPP. We don't know how stretched he is, which is a problem because he's been kind of, he got sent away from the team for breaking quarantine and got, sent to the alternate site. And now he's back. We don't know exactly kind of what his deal is, and the matchup isn't really good against the Twins. So at his price, I'd probably rather just play Sonny Gray, play Lamet, play, Barrios, or go down to a guy like Ray or Gausman or Taijuan Walker or Eliezer Hernandez. I don't know.
Talk to me about Walker a little bit. Obviously, he started off the season with a great start. His underlying numbers have really not been that good. His swing strike rate's sitting at 7.4%, but he has a 22.3% K rate. It's not something that's 100% true 100% of the time, especially with a guy that throws as many different pitches as he does. But Walker, going up against the Padres, decent K rates, lots of power. It's being played in San Diego, which is kind of a neutral ballpark when it comes to home runs this year, especially when it's 82 degrees down there. Talk to me about Walker.
It's really just someone else to play, especially if we do wind up with Gray off the slate and we think ownership's going to, become really condensed onto guys like DeGrom and Lamet and Ray. And I would imagine Gausman gets extra ownership if that happens. And you're kind of just looking for another guy to play that isn't going to be super chalky. I think he's just kind of there because no one's going to want to play him against the Padres. He's not anything fantastic. He's a league average pitcher. He projects for 13 points. The matchup isn't especially good, but I think he's fine at 7,100 and probably very low ownership.
Yeah, no, I like what you're saying. What about Kershaw? We really didn't get into it too much, obviously, historically in the past. The 49ers, wrong sport. Gosh, I'm excited for football. The Giants have not been a team that has struck out a ton so far this year. They have some bats that are actually striking out a decent amount versus lefties. Some that aren't. Sample size isn't massive. We look at the numbers since the beginning of last year, sitting at an 18.5% K rate going up against lefties. with so many people going on DeGrom, it's baseball. Anything can happen, especially against the Marlins, who for some reason seem to do weird things on a very consistent basis. I think last year DeGrom had an outing where he ended up with 4 points going up against the Marlins because the Marlins are the Marlins and they just hate me and everyone in DFS. Like, what about swapping over to Kershaw at drastically lower ownership than DeGrom, I would assume?
I'm fine with that in a GPP setting. I mean, DeGrom does project quite a bit better, but it's baseball. Anything can happen. And if you're going to get Kershaw at half the ownership or a third of the ownership, I'm fine with having some of him too. Like he's been really good this year. You know, he actually projects as like a top 5 true talent pitcher in baseball at this point. And it's a good matchup. You know, I'm not quite buying the strikeouts of the Giants. I still think this is probably going to wind up being a low strikeout offense, especially at least the iteration of the lineup we're probably going to see today. But I like Kershaw in general. I like him as kind of a pivot.
Yeah. What about I'm trying to look at guys that we haven't talked about? What about Hauser? Guy that was a lot better last season. This season, his strikeouts have dropped off pretty drastically. He's going up against a team that walks a whole lot, and also strikes out at a mediocre rate. Like we haven't projected at 0.25% ownership. Like, any interest in him?
I don't love him. Like, I think he's, you know, a little bit above average as a pitcher, but he's not a big strikeout guy. Like you said, this isn't a big strikeout offense. Narvaez probably behind the plate, you know, really bad pitch framer. And his leash is always very short. You know, he's like, a guy who's usually going to throw like 85 pitches. And that's just tough to use in a GPP, I think, especially when he's not super cheap. Like Ray is cheaper. Gausman is cheaper. Taijuan Walker's cheaper. Eliezer Hernandez is cheaper. I have a hard time making a case for him.
All right. People are asking about Fulmer. Any love for him?
Not really. I mean, he's starting to get stretched out, but he's definitely not stretched enough yet. He'll finish probably 75 pitches today, you know, against a pretty good Cubs offense, pretty good hitting environment. I have a hard time justifying him today.
All right. People want us to talk about the Brewers boycott news. I'm not going to lie. I've been smoking meat for the last hour. That's not a sexual innuendo. I'm literally making a tri-tip. So I didn't actually see too much on that.
Yeah, so the Bucks tonight announced they're boycotting the game. And so there's been a lot of tweets and stuff going around about Brewers players talking about boycotting the game tonight as well. And so if that happens, obviously, you know, that game won't be played. Sonny Gray will be off the slate. I mean, I think there's a non-zero chance all the games get boycotted tonight and everything we're talking about doesn't matter. But hopefully, you know, I mean, it's just something to be aware of while you're building your lineups, especially if you're including guys from that game. It seems like if there's one game that has the most risk, it does seem like it's that game.
Well, I mean, it'll probably be every game's postponed outside of San Francisco, and then Gausman goes for 50. It's if the Mets game gets postponed and Giants doesn't, I'll give you an out, and it's no blood, just so you know. Any other pitchers that we missed here? John Gray, like the other Gray. Any interest in him? Eunice, Hudson?
Not really. I think Eliezer Hernandez is probably like the cheapest, lowest guy I would go. And especially if we do wind up without Gray on the slate, without, you know, this game, you know, one less like good pitcher to have in your pool. I think having a guy like Eliezer Hernandez in there probably makes a good amount of sense because I think, you know, he'll be the least owned of the viable guys today, probably. You know, you'll see ownership on DeGrom, on Lamet, on Kershaw, on Ray, on Gausman. Eliezer's probably comes in below those guys and is a little bit cheaper, you know, a little bit worse, but still fine, especially at lower ownership.
All right. Well, let's talk about some bats then. You ready for that?
Let's do it.
All right. Let's start it off with catcher here. Contreras, probably going to be one of the top options on the slate. Fulmer, not great. Detroit, not great. He's batting fifth. He's expensive. Are you paying up at catcher?
It's going to depend. I probably will not be able to get up to Contreras. I think it's possible to do it. I like him. I think he's easily the top guy on the slate. I don't think you have to go up there. I think you can go cheaper if you want to.
All right. Who's your cheap option then?
I think in kind of the mid-range, I think Stephen Vogt is totally fine. Like the roof is going to be open again in Arizona tonight. It's like 110 degrees. I like an Arizona stack. I think Vogt is fine as a catcher. I really love cheap Tigers today. John Lester is bad. John Lester is not good. This is a solid, sneaky hitter's park, decent hitting conditions. Austin Romine's 3.3K. I think he's probably your cheap guy. There isn't that 2.5K guy on this slate today. He doesn't really exist. I don't really want to play Drew Butera or Cam Gallagher. So it's probably Romine for me. If you need to save an extra couple, you need to pinch the pennies. 3K for Austin Barnes, I think is fine too.
Yeah, no. By the way, guys, if you haven't signed up for the Sharpside app, sign up for the Sharpside app. It's real simple. It's free. You swipe left, you swipe right. It's basically the Tinder of sports betting. That is not an official view of RotoGrinders. That's just something I say in case there's trademark infringement. You get a streak, you lock in your bets, you get to a certain point, and you start making money. You get FanDuel credit starting at 5 bets in a row, locked one, minimum 140 or minus 140 odds. I've got one today. I can't remember what it is. I think it's the Oakland run line. Yeah, it's the Oakland run line, minus 1.5. I wanted to go with the Oakland money line, but it just went over the amount that I need to. If you're sports betting tonight, A's, Diamondbacks, money line, love both of them. Fantastic plays today. You had one. What was yours?
Mine was the Reds money line because I think they're a stronger favorite than Vegas is giving them. Obviously, this game would have to play, but if it doesn't, you get your money back. Like I said, Sonny Gray, I think, is just like an elite pitcher, and I don't think he's being treated as a truly elite pitcher at this point. And I think that's driving a little bit of value on this line.
Yeah, I like that one too. That's a good line there. Minus 131 is currently what it has, but I think over on some sports books, if you got multiple in your state, I saw it as low as I think 125. So depending on what it's at now, great thing to bet on. Great thing to put your lock bet on. Like what you're saying, Cardi. Let's move on to first base here. Cabrera, too cheap. We both like Detroit, 2.7K. Going up against Lester, has the platoon split. You just locking him in?
I really am. I think he's your cash guy. Obviously, if you have money to go up and spend on, Bellinger or Goldschmidt or Rizzo, like they're totally fine. But Miguel Cabrera at 2.7K in this awesome matchup, he's just the clear cash guy for me.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. That's my plan. We have some other guys there that are cheap. What are your thoughts on O'Hearn as a potential pivot?
I was going to mention him. I think he's the easy pivot in GPPs because I do think Miggy will be popular. But I like the Royals a lot as well as kind of a cheaper, sneakier stack. Dakota Hudson's not especially good. Dakota Hudson has a wide split. And so a lefty like O'Hearn is a guy who sets up really well against him. Batting cleanup with the platoon advantage, 2.5K. He's a very strong play today.
What do you think about a full-on Royals stack? Like, if you don't throw Witt in there, you got Dozier at 3.9K, Soler at 4.1K, O'Hearn's at 2.5, Franco 3.3, Gordon 2.3. Like, that's a super cheap stack there. And you can throw in Gallagher at 2.1K. He's so cheap.
That's exactly it. I mean, Gallagher, you can fill your catcher spot for free. Like, it's just there's so many cheap guys here. And it's a good matchup. And they're not a good offense, but they're not an offense that you should average 2.3K for your stack for.
Yeah, they've been perpetually underpriced all season outside of 2 games, and then went right back to being underpriced again. Hudson is not the greatest pitcher in the world. He's not terrible, but he's probably not worth having guys have Kershaw pricing going up against him. So I'm right there with you. Any other first baseman? I really like Olsen. He's just good, and I love that guy. I had a goat named after him. True story there. Goldschmidt is in a decent spot here. Santana's probably a bit too cheap. Rizzo, obviously the Cubs are one of the best lineups on the board today. Anyone else that I'm missing there?
I think you can think about Candelario in your Tigers stacks. I think Jake Lamb and Christian Walker are both pretty cheap in your Diamondback stacks. I think that's first base.
All right, let's move on to second here. And another guy that's way too cheap, clearly underpriced, going to be the chalk, and there's a reason for that. It's going up against Eunice. Bullpen's not that great. Probably leading off. I don't know if we have that lineup yet.
Yeah, he's leading off.
All right, yeah, I just didn't press refresh very soon. Yeah. So Wong, 3.3K. Talk to me about him.
I mean, he was, 75% owned in cash games last night, I think. It's going to be the same thing tonight. He's just underpriced for who he is as a hitter. It's a good matchup. There's power potential against a guy who gives up a lot of home runs. There's stolen base potential with his speed. He's just too cheap. And I think everyone's going to realize it, and they're going to play him. And so that's your cash play. And in GPPs, you try to be different.
All right. What about other guys' tournaments? I mean, obviously, Scope, we talked about Detroit over and over again. You guys can pretty much assume at every single position we like a Detroit player. Marte, Dome's open, going up against Gray. Gray's been terrible. 4.8K, absolutely worth it. Cronenworth sitting there at 3.8K and just keeps mashing, keeps being underpriced. Got a little bit of a price bump over the last week. Still probably worth throwing him in some GPPs. Muncy going up against the best pitcher on the board in Gaussman. I guess you can play him. Moustakas, 5.1K, not a terrible matchup. Hauser, but then you got that bullpen. Like, what other guys are you looking at?
Yeah, I mean, Ketel Marte is a top guy on the board. You mentioned Gray and the roof. Gray also allows a lot of stolen bases, so this is a good stolen base spot for Marte. Jason Kipnis, in your Cub stacks, he's 3.1. He's very cheap. If you need just like a super cheap punt one-off kind of guy, Franklin Barretto's in the lineup for Oakland tonight. He's 2.6K against the bad lefty. He's hitting ninth, so it's not great, but I think that's fine. Shed Long in your sneaky Seattle stacks, 2.6K.
Oh, yeah.
Especially if he winds up higher in the order. I do think with Lamet going to be so popular, a Seattle leverage stack does make sense tonight.
Well, and Seattle, for some reason, seems to crush people's hopes and dreams on a consistent basis. I mean, they can't win games that often because their bullpen is one of the worst I've ever seen, and their starting pitching's trash. But their hitting has actually been fairly decent this season, and we haven't pegged it all under 1% ownership. So
yeah, at that kind of ownership, I'm totally on board with that in GPPs.
Yeah, no, I love them. I probably need to update my CVRs right after this and put them as one of my favorite stacks. Anything else we're missing, or moving on to the hot corner, third base?
Let's do it. Hot corner.
Arenado, Dome's open, platoon split. It's Arenado versus lefty because lefty mashers do exist. But it's also just Arenado against a guy that can't find the strike zone, gives up a ton of fly balls and hard contact to righties. Like, Arenado, your cash game guy, or is it you going to go cheaper with Carp?
I think if you can get up to Arenado, you want to do it. I think he's obviously the best guy on the board tonight. He's great. I don't think Carpenter's in the lineup tonight again. He sat last night. I don't see him in there today unless I'm missing something.
He is not.
Yeah, so no Carpenter. He would have been the other guy I think that you really make a strong case for. I do think you can make a case for Justin Turner. I do think you can make a case for David Bodie at 2.8K against Fulmer. Like if you don't have the money to get up to Arenado, I think you probably go the complete opposite direction and save. You go with a guy like Bodie, or you go with a guy like Isaac Paredes for 2.2 against Leicester.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of other guys. Escobar, 3.9K.
Escobar, definitely a good play, especially in your Diamondback stacks.
Yeah.
Hunter Dozier, I think, is fine in your Royal stacks. I prefer the lefties, but he's hitting second. He's a good hitter. I think that's totally fine.
What do you think about Paredes in a wraparound stack for Detroit?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I mentioned him as a potential cash play if you need to go all the way down. Definitely in your Detroit stacks, he's one of the best values on the slate.
Yeah. Are you thinking about going double barrel pitchers just because of the cheap price tags on some of the Royals in Detroit?
It depends, I guess, on what double barrel means. Are you talking like DeGrom, Kershaw?
Yeah.
Probably not, just because I think Lamet and Gray, if that game plays, are such good values. They project basically the same as Kershaw, and they're like 1,000 less, 1.5K less. So I'd rather go with one of those two. But, in GPPs, I think a DeGrom Kershaw setup is totally fine with a cheap stack and some good one-offs. Like, I think that definitely works.
Yeah. One guy we didn't mention, A's, love the A's tonight. Chapman, just bombs. Like, how much I've loved the A's stacks for years. It's really paying off so far. Like, I guess we'll get to that when we get to stacks, but you on board for Chapman paying 5.7K in GPPs?
It's an expensive price, but I would imagine that keeps the ownership really low. So I'm okay with that.
Well, plus when you play Gaussman, like it's just easy because he's the best pitcher on the slate that's going to outscore DeGrom.
I do think he's aside from Arenado, he's the best third baseman on the slate. So if you are running a roster construction where you have that money, you're going to get him at an ownership rate that, is low because people aren't going to be able to get there.
Yeah. Let's move on to shortstop. I already talked about Arizona, Dome Open, blah, 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 Ray, Chalky. Story's my favorite guy tonight. It's easier to pay up for him if you got the Gaussman. Is that who you're using for cash?
Yeah, no matter what you do at pitching, you can afford Trevor Story tonight. He is the top priority in terms of spend-ups. You want to pay for Trevor Story. He's the best hitter on the Rockies. He's got the platoon advantage against Ray, who, if he's actually broken right now, it's just a fantastic, fantastic matchup. Even if he regresses immediately, it's still a great matchup because he's got a wide platoon split, always gives up stolen bases. The roof is open. Play Trevor Story tonight in cash.
Yep. What about other guys? Pivots for tournaments. Nico, 4.2K, too cheap. Got some pop. Lester's trash. Baez, DeJong, I think he's in the lineup. Tatis, oh gosh. Man.
Tatis is in a good spot tonight. I think he's a good GPP pivot off of Story, who I imagine will get most of the ownership. But obviously Tatis is a great player himself. I'm trying to look it up. I'm pretty sure Walker's one of these guys that's really easy to steal on. Where is he?
Is there anything Tatis can't do?
That's true. So I think Tatis is great. I think on the low end, Adalberto Mondesi at 3K as part of this cheap Royal stack we've kind of talked about is good. I think Chris Taylor against Gaussman is well enough priced. Who else are we looking at?
Edman, did he make the lineup there?
Yeah, he's hitting second. So if you're running out of Cardinals stack, do we think they're going to be popular? They were very popular last night. Are people going to go back there?
I think that just because of Wong and Edman and DeJong in there and Molina being one of the chalkier catchers, like they'll just round out the stack with Goldschmidt. And so it becomes a little bit easier, especially with guys down at the bottom of the lineup that are just too cheap with Fowler, O'Neill, and Carlson. 3.1K, 2.7K. We currently have them pegged at an average outside of Wong of around 9% ownership. I think it'll probably be higher than that. But
over on FanDuel, you mentioned Chapman. On FanDuel, Marcus Semion's 2.8K. So he's kind of like, I think it's harder to get up to Story there, I think, because you only have the one pitcher. You don't get to save with the second spot. You definitely want DeGrom tonight. So I think Semien is Dunkaroos. I love Dunkaroos.
Yeah, they're selling at 7-Eleven. I just bought 10 packs of them after going through 6 last week.
So I think Semien over there is great.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the outfield. My top guy, can you guess? The dome's open.
Is it Starling Marte?
Cole Calhoun.
Oh, Calhoun, yeah. You knew it was one of those two. I think they're both great plays, and Calhoun is obviously much better priced. So Calhoun is a guy you should be highly prioritizing tonight, I think.
Yeah, right there with you. Calhoun sitting there at 3.9K. Like all the outfielders there are great. We got Schwarber is probably a bit underpriced and Happ's a bit underpriced. Both of them are in a good spot today. Piscotty, super cheap, like allows you to get the rest of the Oakland bats and still do a stack. Grisham, 3.9K, probably going to have a decent amount of ownership. He obviously hit 3 bombs the other night. Mariners bullpen's trash. Walker, average. Guy like. What are some other guys that you're looking at?
The cheap Detroit guys, I think, are definitely cash viable. A guy like Victor Reyes opens a lot of things up. Jorge Bonifacio is in the lineup. I think he is totally fine. Shin-Soo Choo is leading off tonight at 3.6K against Mike Fiers with power potential, with stolen base potential. I think that's too cheap for Choo. I think Joey Gallo is too cheap. I think at the very least he's a great GPP one-off with big-time power upside. Danny Santana also in the lineup, too cheap. I think those Rangers outfielders are really nice tonight. I think the Cubs outfielders you can definitely make a case for. Ian Happ, especially. Kyle Schwarber. Outfield, that's kind of where I'm looking.
Nice. I'm looking at my delicious tri-tip. It's up to 108 degrees. The excitement is real right now. But that should pretty much do it for bats there, guys. Go ahead and drop some questions in if you can. Let's talk stacks, some of your favorite ones of the night. We've already talked about Detroit, how much we both love it. Mariners, I think, is a fantastic big field GPP stack. Like, absolutely fantastic. Big Padres fan tonight. Diamondbacks is going to be one on the top one. I think I'm going to full on fade the Dodgers. Like, I don't know. I might X them out of my player pool entirely. Like, again, I'm on Gausman, probably locking him in. So they're just not going to be in for me. A's probably going to be moderately chalky depending on which site you're on, but they're definitely a good stack. Detroit, KC, like any ones that I'm missing that you think might be some decent GPP stacks.
I like the Dodgers, I think, more than you do. Like, I definitely get the Gausman play, but we saw last night they came in solo owned because of all the expensive pitching. And I think tonight we could see the same thing because there's just not a lot to love in terms of low end pitching. Like, you have to roster Robbie Ray to get them. You can't roster Gausman and get them. So you kind of need to go with a guy like Robbie Ray or Eliezer Hernandez or someone like that. So I think the Dodgers could come in too low owned. I think they are a good play tonight. Obviously, that Chase game I think is great. I think the Cubs are really well priced and are a good stack too. And the Mariners leverage stack, like you said, awesome play.
I don't know if you heard that little notification, but apparently my Echo now tells me when I get a package delivered. I just got a nose hair trimmer because apparently I'm a hairy guy. What are the odds? We already talked about Clevenger a little bit. Someone's asking about. We're both off of him, right?
Yeah, with some of the uncertainty with him, with the other options on the slate, with the bad matchup, with the high price, he's just not a guy I'm on.
Yeah, even with the split, feel okay with Dozier, Soler, Gallagher in a Royal stack. Yeah, Dozier, Soler is fantastic. Gallagher rounds it off. You got the 9-2 or 9-3-4 stack, I believe. Or is it 9-2-3?
Yep. Like I said, I prefer the lefties there because of Hudson's split, but they're all underpriced. You can play righties too.
Yeah, and both those guys can absolutely bomb the ball of the ballpark, and Gallagher is just way too cheap. Do you think some games are canceled and others aren't? So let's talk about a little bit of game theory here because of the possibility of postponements. We're getting close to lock. There's more rumblings. 7 o'clock rolls around. We know the games are starting in 10 minutes. Going with earlier pitchers, earlier players, like, forgot you have to pay off a bet.
I do. Should I do that now? Is that
Might
where we're at?
Yeah. Because, man, I've been on a roll with pitching lately.
You have. So I'm going to do Prairie Fire. We got some tequila, some Cuervo Silver. Here we go. And we got some Tabasco sauce.
Man, you know what's the worst part about COVID?
What's
Outside
that?
of all the things, I have to get my Chipotle Tabasco in these little canters instead of the bottles over at Chipotle. I mean, there are a lot of worse things, but from a food perspective, that's by far the most inconvenient thing in my life right now. Is not.
Yeah,
I mean, I could just order a bottle online, but I just don't feel good about that since I can get from Chipotle for free.
Yeah. So here's to you, Jordan Lyles. We bet he would finish over or under 5 points. He finished, I think, at 4.6 or 4.7.
Well,
so,
I originally said negative points, which he was negative 13
did,
at one point.
I increased the line for better odds, and it did not work in my favor.
Well, cheers, my friend.
Cheers.
Oh, man. Yeah. By the way, I just got 57% alcohol gin.
That is a very high percentage of alcohol for gin.
Yeah, I'm super excited to try it. I still haven't opened it yet because I want to be able to stumble to my bed at some point, and during the week, that's not a good call if you have to wake up in the morning for work. But Canna, okay for cash games?
No, I don't think he's a good enough hitter. I haven't looked, but he's a guy historically they tend to pinch hit for a good amount. And I don't think the spot tonight is like so good that you have to smash it in cash games.
Yeah, some people ask about Sonny Gray. We both said we like him more than LeMay. And if that game is going to be canceled, it's just be near your computer and don't have any lineup with him and LeMay.
Exactly. Play him instead of Lamet and have a contingency, which I guess would just be swapping to Lamet in any lineup you have him. But if the game does play, I think he is a fantastic play. I think he's exactly the same as Lamet tonight and will come in at a third of the ownership.
All right, GPP thoughts, DK, A stack. I love them.
I like the A's. I think they're fine. Obviously, it's a good spot against a bad left-handed pitcher. The roof presumably will be closed, which will give it basically the best pitching weather on the slate, which is not ideal, but I think they're fine, especially the right-handers.
All right. Pay up for Contreras or pay up somewhere else?
I would probably, it depends on what you're doing with the rest of your lineup. I think you can go down a catcher to a guy like Romine or to a guy like Barnes. You want to spend up for Story, especially if we're talking about cash games. If you can get up to Arenado, you probably want to do that too. I think it's doable to do Contreras. I don't think you have to.
Yeah, Mets stack okay for DK?
I'm not super on a Mets stack. Eliezer is a pretty good pitcher. And it's the best pitcher's park in baseball. So I'm not loving the Mets. I think you can one-off a guy like Conforto. But in terms of like a full stack, I just think there's better options.
All right, Wong for GPPs. I say you full on fade him. Like 26% for a guy. I don't care how good of a play he is. Just it doesn't make sense with GPPs to me.
Yeah, in GPPs, you can easily fade Wong. If he's going to come in at 50% ownership or something crazy, then you definitely don't have to have him.
All right, twin stack. Brewers game might have just been canceled.
Yeah, might have. Someone just said it in chat. I don't know if it's true or not. I don't know. Like, I don't want to play Clevenger, but I don't really want to stack twins against him either. I can see one-offing a guy like Kepler, but a full stack, again, I'm not super about that.
Yeah, I'm trying to look at this. Trying to find. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not seeing anything right now.
I know. I'm seeing it. There's a beat writer saying that the game's not happening.
All right, so play LeMay, or we'll see. Yep, decide not to play. Well, we'll see if anything plays tonight. This is going to be interesting. Might be a decent idea to stack the earlier games.
Yeah, it's what do you do from a game theory perspective here? Like, if we don't have news before lock of I guess what you said, stack the earlier games because at least they will play.
Yeah, at least we'll know if they're playing. They're probably not gonna stop a game in the middle of the game.
No, they definitely won't do that. It'll either start or it won't. I guess pay attention and ask the crunch time guys what they've heard because I haven't seen any other teams talking about it today. Like, I saw a lot of stuff about the Brewers and the Reds talking about doing it. I haven't seen anything about anyone else talking about doing it. That doesn't mean they won't, but I do kind of think at this point it's probably all or nothing, but I could be totally wrong.
Yeah, we'll see. FYI, Chapman's out, so get him out of your lineup. But last thought on the night, go.
What is that?
Last thought. Last closing thoughts.
Last thought is let's go Jacob deGrom. Hopefully you do better than Kevin Gausman. Because if not, I'm taking more shots next week, guys.
Gausman will be the top pitcher on the slate. The two top stacks are Detroit and the Mariners in big field GPPs. Get him in there and cry the night away with me so we can cry together. All right. Well, we're out of here, guys. It's been fun. Cardi, I'll probably see you next week since this happens every single week now. But good luck on sports if they even play tonight. We're out of here. See you, kids.